Brought to you by Bangkok Bank.
Good morning, ASEAN. Freshen up your world, your thought, and your idea with us every weekday from 7:30 to 8 a.m. I'm Patsurang Desha Putharangsi.
And I'm also here with you, Nirasha Malisaklami, and today is Wednesday, 11th of September 2013. You're watching us live from Bangkok. Let's start off with
the Muslim violence in the south of the Philippines, as houses reported were on fire yesterday as fighting erupted between security forces and Muslim rebels occupying 5 villagers in a southern Philippine city, Zamboanga. Hundreds of heavily armed Muslim gunmen have been occupying the 5 villages in Zamboanga city, trapping 180 civilians. Firefighters were prevented from getting to the burning houses by sniper fire. And according to Interior Secretary Mar Roxas, earlier told reporters that additional troops were deployed to support the ongoing operations. And of course, they have secured their forces and stabilized the situation. And they have also contained and isolated, which means they will no longer cause harm and occupy any other parts in Zamboanga city. Roxas said the majority of Zamboanga city was now considered safe and told reporters he had instructed both police and troops to prioritize the safety of the trapped civilians caught in the skirmish. And he said that they are taking these numbers quite seriously, and this is why the military and police are exercising their restraint, exercising their wisdom, ensuring there's no misencounter, there's no mistake, there's no accidental shooting. The Zamboanga City Council reported at least 6 people dead and 24 wounded since the violence erupted Monday. More than 3,000 people have fled their homes and sought shelter at temporary evacuation centers. Security officials say the rebels belong to a rogue faction of a separatist Moro National Liberation Front group, which entered into a peace agreement with the government in 1996 and runs a Muslim autonomous region on southern Mindanao Island. Well, 5 years later, the faction led by former university professor Nur Musuri broke away, claiming the government had not fully implemented the deal.
And now let's shift our attentions to Myanmar, as prominent Buddhist monk who heads a movement accused of stirring violence against the Muslim in Myanmar and representative of the Muslim and Christian communities yesterday signed a peace agreement after a year of sectarian violence between the country's majority Buddhists and minority Muslims. Anchin Viratu, who once called himself the Burmese Bin Laden, is a chief proponent of a movement known as 969, accused of stirring anti-Muslim sentiment in a deeply Buddhist nation, where curbs on freedom of speech and assembly have eased since the end of military rule 2 years ago. Tensions have been smoldering between radical elements of Myanmar's Buddhist majority and Muslims. Bouts of religious violence have killed at least 237 people and displaced 150,000 in the past year, testing the resolve of a 2-year-old Khasi civilian government. The peace agreement was signed yesterday after a 2-day meeting attended by 25 religious representatives. The agreement proposed to set up direct communications between Buddhist and Muslim leaders at a national level to try to prevent violence. Anti-Muslim violence in Buddhist-dominated Myanmar erupted in western Rakhine State last year and has spread into the central heartlands and areas near the old capital Yangon this year. The clashes have left more than 200 dead and hundreds of thousands homeless. Thousands of Rohingyas Muslims have fled from the country to neighboring countries to escape the violence.
Let's take a look at the business sector in Myanmar, as the country plans to pass a new Company Act by the end of 2014. It aims to improve transparency and update rules governing the operations of companies in Myanmar. The current act has been in existence since 1914 and has not been revised for the last 99 years. This was revealed at the Myanmar Global Investment Forum. While encouraging foreign investment, Myanmar also wants to ensure that the needs of its local firms are not neglected. The government is therefore working with the Asian Development Bank to draw up a revised Company Act. One key change to draw up precise criteria to determine whether to label a company local or foreign based on its management board makeup. Ong Nyang-u, Director General of the Directorate of Investment and Company Administration at the Ministry of National Planning and Economic Development, said that they are trying as early as possible to revise this law so that there will be a better business environment in Myanmar. So they're now also encouraging small and medium enterprises in Myanmar, and a new law will be supportive of the SME development. Of course, SMEs in the country are all run by the private sector, so this law will help to develop the SME sector as well. Myanmar corporations applauded the coming of a new law and said it was long overdue. The revised legislation will have a huge impact on doing business in the country. According to Searchpun, another businessman, chairman of Searchpun and Associates, said that this is one area that is solely needed because of a lot of attention over the last 2 years have been about FDI, foreign investors, foreign companies coming into Myanmar. He thinks it is time for the authorities to revisit and see how they can actually help the Myanmar companies, and at the same time, probably even more than ever, to raise up their capacities, augment their capabilities. The new law will certainly come to pass as the government reiterates its commitment to boost the country's economic growth. Win Chin, Finance Minister and Chairman of the Myanmar Investment Commission, said that Myanmar's open door policy drastically changed the business environment for the private sector, and it provides greater opportunities for greater private sector participation in various reforms conducted by the new government.
And the United States is expressing fresh concerns about the outcomes of the Cambodians' recent elections that handed a victory to the ruling party of Prime Minister Hun Sen. State Department spokeswoman Mary Harf said on Monday that a transparent review of reported irregularities in the July elections would help address flaws in Cambodia's electoral process. She also said that it would give Cambodians greater confidence in their electoral system. Cambodia's opposition plans to boycott the opening sessions of parliament and hold 3 days of protest next week unless there is an investigation into allegations of widespread fraud in the vote. And on Sunday, the opposition's attempts at appealing the outcome were dealt a blow when the National Election Committee officially ratified the victory of Hun Sen's Cambodian People's Party. The Elections Committee said that Hun Sen's CPP took 68 seats. It said the opposition Cambodian National Rescue Party won 55 seats, significantly more seats than it has won in the past. The opposition led by CNRP President Sam Rainsy said that it would have won more seats if the elections had been fair. It says it has received more than 10,000 complaints of irregularities from its supporters.
Thai rubber farmers already accepted the government deal after the break.
Brought to you by Bangkok Bank.
A network of Thai rubber farmers said on Tuesday that it had accepted a government subsidy offer aimed at ending recent mass protests. Thailand is the world's top exporter of natural rubber, and anger among the kingdom's rubber farmers over the falling incomes had posed a growing challenge to Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawat's 2-year-old government. Deputy Government Spokeswoman Sunisa Lerpakawat said the cabinet on Tuesday approved a budget of 21-25 billion baht to subsidize rubber farmers. Today's decision comes ahead of a mass rally by rubber farmers, which could severely affect the economy. An apparent compromise was struck on Tuesday after the government agreed to pay farmers $80 per rai, or 0.4 acres of rubber plantation to help with production costs. In a statement, a grouping of rubber farmers in 15 provinces accepted a deal in principle and called off their next protest, which had been planned for this weekend. He said he can confirm that there will be no rally on September the 14th. And it was unclear, however, if all of the various factions of rubber farmers would accept the offer to help cope with the plunge in rubber prices. In recent weeks, angry rubber farmers have blocked roads, train lines, and even briefly the entrance to the airport in Thailand's south, where plunging global prices for the commodity have hit the local economy hard. On September the 5th, more than 24 police officers were injured and 11 protest leaders were arrested as a demonstration in one part of southern Thailand turned violent. The farmers have accused the government of ignoring their plight while spending billions of dollars on a rice price guarantee seen as mainly benefiting ruling party supporters. The government had previously said another generous price guarantee scheme was something it could not afford. The network urged the government to speed up payments and send a representative to southern Thailand to sign a formal agreement by Friday.
And China's foreign ministry yesterday announced that China and the ASEAN nations will hold meetings on implementing the declarations of the conduct of party in the South China Sea or DOC this weekend. Ministry spokesman Hong Lei specified at a regular press conference that the gatherings would be 6th senior officials meeting and the 9th joint working group on the implementations of the DOC. China and the ASEAN finishes drafting the DOC in 2002, outlining the most important principles in the management of disputes on the South China Sea. Hong said that participants in the weekend's meeting will have in-depth exchanges of views on full and effective implementations of the DOC and enhanced maritime cooperation. China and the ASEAN achieved consensus recently to push for consultation to develop a more detailed code of conduct in the South China Sea or COC. In a June meeting in Brunei, Chinese and ASEAN foreign ministers reiterated that the need of steadily move toward the conclusions of a COC on the basis of consensus. Hong added that the new meetings will also involve official consultations on the COC within the framework of the implementations of the DOC. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that he is confident that both China and its ASEAN neighbors will be able to safeguard peace and stability in the South China Sea after the meeting.
Singapore and Vietnam commemorate their 40th year of bilateral ties with the visit of Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong to Hanoi on Wednesday. During the visit, Mr. Lee will call on General Secretary of the Communist Party Vietnam Nguyen Phu Trong and President Trong Tan Sang. Well, Mr. Lee will also have meetings with Prime Minister Nguyen Thanh Dung and President of the National Assembly Nguyen Sinh Hung. The visit will also see two key events: the elevation of ties between the two countries to strategic partnership and the launch of 5th Vietnam-Singapore Industrial Park that is worth nearly $340 million by the two prime ministers. Ties between Singapore and Vietnam are excellent, and of course, Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyen Thanh Dung last visited Singapore in May, where he also spoke at the Defense Security Shangri-La Dialogue. Vietnam's ambassador to Singapore, Tran Hai Ho, said that over the last 40 years, ties have grown in leaps and bounds in all fields, including politics, trade, investment, and people-to-people ties. Well, some 14,000 Vietnamese have benefited from technical assistance and training under the Singapore Cooperation Program since 1992. Singapore is also Vietnam's second largest investor, with more than $28 billion invested in some 1,200 projects as of June. Two-way trade has gone up to $15.8 billion. One symbol of the success of ties between both countries are the Vietnam-Singapore industrial parks, with 4 developed already. The success of the 4 Vietnam-Singapore industrial park projects has spurred Semcoop to explore the possibility of a 5th park. This time, the 5th park will be in central Vietnam. So far, the 4 industrial parks have attracted investments from 22 countries, totaling nearly $6.4 billion. One key result of these investments is the employment of nearly 140,000 Vietnamese in these parks. When asked what more can be done to strengthen Singapore-Vietnam ties, the Vietnam's ambassador to Singapore said that as the two nations are now heading toward a strategic partnership, it is our hope and belief that we can do even better by promoting regular exchanges between high-level leaders, government ministries, and agencies, as well as people-to-people link.
And Malaysia's Prime Minister Najib Razak yesterday called for sustainable growth with balance between development and environmental conservation. Najib told Regional Forum for Health and Environment officials from East and Southeast Asia that the environmental and health issue must be a priority in formulating development plans. In the opening address, he said that in order to secure the development of millions of people who live in poverty, all must also safeguard the global commons, which are the climate, forests, water resources, and biodiversity that sustain life and enable prosperity. The Malaysian Prime Minister warned that developing countries are more exposed and vulnerable to the environmental threat, while their populations are more threatened by unsafe water and air pollution. As Malaysia and neighboring Singapore experienced the worst haze episode in a decade due to wildfire in Indonesia in recent months, Najib added that as the connections between nations grow stronger, it is incumbent on each of us to argue for more sustainable economic development within our own borders so that we may all enjoy the benefits of our shared resources, which are water, land, and air that connects us. Meanwhile, Yongwu Park, Regional Director for the United Nations Environment Programme, or UNEP, that co-hosts the forum, called for better data and information basis on environment and health linkage for policy making. The first Ministerial Regional Forum on Environment and Health in Southeast and East Asian country was held in Thailand 2007 and subsequently in South Korea in 2010. And for this year's forum, under the theme of Health and Environment at the Center of Development, it will see officials from Brunei, Cambodia, China, Indonesia, Japan, Laos, Malaysia, Mongolia, Myanmar, Philippines, South Korea, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam embark on discussions on collaborative governance efforts, partnerships, and impacts related to environmental and health issues.
That's it for today's edition of Good Morning ASEAN. We'll see you again, same time, same place, same channel. I'm Patsurang Desha Putharangsi.
Thank you so much for watching. I'm Nirosha Malisak Lami. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะ